All right, what's your name?
Harold H. Angle.
And what unit did you serve with in the Second World War?
I was assigned as a replacement with the 28th Infantry Division, 112th Regiment.
Also known as the Bloody Bucket.
Right.
And where did you go to basic training?
I went to Camp Walters in Texas, close to a small town called Mineral Wells.
Did you grow up in Pennsylvania your whole life?
I lived here, born here, and lived here all my life.
And so you were kind of lucky because in Massachusetts, not everyone ended up with the 26th Division, which was out of Massachusetts. They tend to spread the guys out to go to different National Guard units all over the country, but you got to go to your home state's National Guard.
Yes.
How'd that make you feel?
Well, it was, I didn't know anybody. Mm-hmm. As a replacement, I was not with the original company that came over to France. So I just joined up with them at Colmar, city of Colmar, France. And that was in early January 1945. The Battle of the Bulge had been already going on as of December the 16th, 1944. But I joined up about the 4th or the 5th of the month of January.
But Harold, I gotta ask you, from what I understand, the division was in complete disarray at that time. Am I wrong?
Yes, they lost quite a few soldiers during the beginning of the Battle of the Bulge, and even the division band, they had to put down their instruments and pick up their carbines and go fight.
I hear stories about what a rough time they had in the Hurtgen Forest, and I know you were a replacement.
Yeah.
And then how they were pretty much overrun during the Battle of the Bulge, and there was just miscellaneous guys running around everywhere. They even formed like a team of them, in Team Snafu in Bastogne, I think, around that area. Where did you first start to see combat with your regiment? In Belgium or?
No, in France.
In France, okay.
In France.
And what was your first kind of combat experience? I know a lot of guys came under artillery fire. Tell me about it.
Well, I was only there with the division I joined one day, and the next night I went on a patrol mission to take out a machine gun nest up in the Vosges Mountains. That's V-O-S-G-E-S, Vosges Mountains, not too far from Colmar, France. On the way up the mountain, it was our platoon was chosen to go take this machine gun nest out.
Hold on one second. Okay, go ahead.
Our sergeant led the column to go up a trail. There was snow on the ground, about anywhere from 4 to 6 inches of snow. And the Germans laid a wire across the trail. When the sergeant got to that wire, he didn't see it, it was under the snow. He tripped it. And when he tripped it, flares went out all over lit up the whole side of the mountain. And as soon as those flares went off, then the Germans opened up fire with the machine gun about where they thought we were. Fortunately, there was a depression in the ground where we could hunker down so that the bullets were flying over our heads instead of at us. But we were pinned down all night. We went in there about 8 o'clock at night. And finally, around 5 o'clock in the morning, the commanding officer said, we can't go up this way. It's too many people are going to get hit. So he said, we're going to go back down the mountain and try to come up and get them from behind. So they appointed me a second scout, and we were going up the mountain again a different way. We put white hoods over us to camouflage us in the snow. And as it began to get to be daylight, and I was walking through the snow, I was on the left flank. The first first scout was on the right flank, I was on the left flank. And as I was walking, like in this direction, I saw some other soldiers coming this way. They also had white hoods down over them. So at first I didn't know whether they were enemy or friend. But as I got closer, I noticed one of the Germans didn't have his hood completely pulled down over his helmet. And I noticed that helmet. And as soon as I noticed that helmet, I motioned everybody down. I'm a little further out than what the rest of the platoon is. I was the first one to see them. So when we hit the ground, they saw us too, and they hit the ground. And we started exchanging fire with each other. And during the exchange of fire, one of the bullets came in and hit me on the helmet. I have a picture of it here that shows. Try not to touch the face of it. It hit the brim of my helmet. And this is the bullet that hit my helmet. At first, I didn't know what happened because the velocity of that bullet hitting my helmet caused me to black out momentarily. And when I came to, I started to fire my rifle again, but I couldn't fire it from the shoulder. I had to put the butt end down on the ground and fire it because I was hurting here in this shoulder. This bullet went past my ear. I had a wool knit cap pulled down over my ear. The wool knit cap was torn to all to shreds. There was only a couple threads hanging there. It never touched my ear, but it really tore the hat up over the right ear, and it went in to this right shoulder. Now, I couldn't do anything about it at the time because we were still exchanging fire. So during the exchange of fire, one of the Germans closest to me threw this grenade at me because I was the closest one to them. And I saw this grenade coming. Not much I could do. I couldn't stand up. If I stood up, I was going to get hit by a small arms fire. So I decided to cover my head with my arms, put my face down into the snow, with my helmet out in this direction, and this, I said a quick prayer. I said, God, protect me. This grenade fell less than the distance you are from me, about 3 feet in front of me, and it was a dud. It never exploded. But needless to say, I didn't pick it up for a souvenir. I squirmed my way away from it because I still couldn't stand up because of the exchange of fire. So eventually, the commanding officer said, we're going to form a skirmish line across the forest. But he says, while we're forming the skirmish line, I'm going to have the guys lob some mortars in the area where we think they are. And whenever I give the signal, I want everybody to stand up, fire their rifles for all you can, for all you're worth. And he said, I don't care if you see anything or not. Just keep firing away, because as long as you're firing, they'll probably keep down. And so the mortar fire stopped. He gave the command to get up and start firing. So we all walked in a skirmish line towards them, firing our rifles. I was firing mine from the hip. And
what were you carrying for a weapon?
My M1 rifle.
Mm-hmm.
I had an M1 rifle. I might say also that I was the rifle grenadier for the platoon. I only had one grenade. I put it on the end of my rifle, and of course you know you have to put a blank in to fire it. But before you fire it, you're supposed to pull the pin on the grenade. To this day, I can't remember, with all the chaos that was going on at the time, whether I pulled that pin. I did fire the grenade. It went off of the rifle. It went off. But I don't know whether it ever exploded, because I'm not sure that I pulled the pin.
Just like the German who threw that grenade at you.
Yeah. So,
what were you aiming at? What was your target? Were they in a trench? Was it?
No, they weren't in a trench. They were just on the ground.
Okay.
No, they didn't have time to dig a trench.
Mm-hmm.
And but as we were walking through the forest there towards them, I didn't see them, but some of the other fellows in the platoon off to my right, they said that they saw 2 dead Germans there. So I don't know whether they were killed by the mortar fire or by our small arms fire. But there was about 7 of them. The other 5 got away. We took the high ground, and while I was digging the foxhole on the high ground, I was standing up in the foxhole, and there's another soldier beside me. He cocked his leg up. He wanted to rest a little bit from digging the foxhole. So he cocked his leg up on top of the foxhole, and the Germans heard us digging in, and they were strafing the area, and I can still see the bullets going across in front of my foxhole, and it hit him in the leg. But he wasn't seriously hurt, but he was hit in the leg. So we decided not to chase them any further.
Now this is still France, right, Harold?
This is in France, yeah. No one had crossed the Rhine River yet.
Yeah.
And so the commanding officer said, well, we're not going to pursue them any further. I mean, they could either get captured trying to get back to the German lines, or get into another skirmish with another platoon someplace. We decided not to pursue them any further. So that was over with, and I decided to go back to the rear where we had a medic. And I said, I was hitting this shoulder here. I said, it's hurting. I don't know how bad it is. And he said, well, strip down. So I had an overcoat on. I took my overcoat off, my field jacket, my OD shirt. I had a sweater on, and I had an undershirt. When I took the OD shirt off, what did I do with it? That's about 2/3 the size of it. About 1/3 of it broke off when it hit my helmet.
And what is that?
It's from an automatic weapon, because they had automatic weapons. We had just M1 rifles.
But it's a bullet, right?
Yeah, and it was like in a magazine that they put a magazine in, and fire a volley of bullets at one time. But anyways, while I stripped down, took the OD shirt off, this fell down into the snow, and the medic saw it. I didn't see it, but the medic saw it. He picked it up and he said, here's a souvenir for you. So he looked at the shoulder. He said, all it is a bruise.
Wow.
No blood. Didn't draw any blood. But it was sore. But anyways, it was so that was the first bit of combat that I was in, and it really was the most combat that I had been in.
Right in the beginning, yeah. What about did you go into Germany at all?
Yes. Yeah.
Did it get intense out there?
Well, there was a small town called Hellenthal, Germany. This is before we got there, though. No one had crossed the Rhine River at this point. This was in January, and early January, and so they wanted, there were two small islands in the middle of the Rhine River. We weren't too far from the Rhine River. So they chose 8 of us from our platoon. I was one of the 8. And we trained on a lake in France. We had a rubber raft, and we were pulling another rubber raft behind us. 4 of us in a rubber raft, and we were supposed to go on a mission to cross the Rhine River over to those 2 small islands in the middle of the Rhine. And we were about ready to go whenever General George Patton and his tank battalion crossed the Rhine River first. And when he crossed, our mission was called off. We didn't have to go. So we walked across the bridge.
Yeah.
And we went into a small town called Hellenthal, and there was a big hill there. The Germans had dug a trench all the way around the perimeter of this hill. And we took the hill, and the Germans were down in the valley. So while we were there, though, they had a tank down there in the valley which was firing 88 millimeter shells at us on the perimeter of that hill. They also had artillery down there that were lobbing in at us, and they had what we called them screaming mimis. They were mortars, and they screamed like a woman screaming all the way down. You could hardly tell whether they were going to land, but it was sort of a morale buster in a way. But anyways, they were firing those at us. Fortunately, none of them came close to me, but there were some medics that went in. They were hunkered down, walking on top of the trenches, and they were hunkered down by like this, going like this with their red crosses on front and back. And don't you know that the Germans, when they saw those medics, they stopped firing. They didn't send any artillery. The tank didn't shoot any 88s in. They didn't send off any mortars. Everything got quiet. As soon as those medics got the wounded out, they started up again.
How did that change? Did that change your opinion on the German soldier himself?
Well, I figured it probably was not a German soldier that made that decision. It had to be, I think, a German officer. Now, this is just my supposition, but I just feel as though that the German officer, when he saw those medics taking wounded out, that he had enough compassion to let those medics do their job and not do anything until they got out of sight.
Did you have did that change your opinion or mind on Germans in general?
No, not at all.
As in, you still hated them, or you still liked them, or respected them?
I didn't hate them. I didn't respect them. I just, I mean, you're just like all the rest of the soldiers there. You're there because you were ordered to be there.
Right.
You're doing a job that had to be done, but.
That's what I gather from most veterans do say the same thing, you know.
Yeah. But, and I don't think these were regular German soldiers that would do anything like this. I think it was more like the stormtroopers or Gestapo, which was really the ones that were the most vicious with anybody that they caught. But I mean, I didn't see this being done, but I heard of it being done, where they would take children, 3 or 4 years old, maybe 5, 6 years old, take them out on the firing range, and they'd kill them. They would shoot them and use them as targets. And I don't think that was something that the regular German soldier would do.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it had to be people who were in the Gestapo or the stormtroopers who were.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've seen the photos of off the top of my head, I can't remember. Did the 28th Division liberate any concentration camps?
No.
Okay, I didn't think
They
that.
liberated Paris
Yeah.
in August the 25th of 1944.
Okay. Yeah, no, I wasn't sure if they were on the list of liberating countries. What? Anything else you want to add? Anything else you want to say? Well, you know what? One thing I'd like to ask you is, you know, what message can you deliver to the younger veterans today coming home who have experienced combat that want to move on with their lives and live a nice life and a successful life like you have? What was your secret?
Well, we were a family. My father and mother had a business, and as boys, we worked in the business. And I had a brother who was older than me, 3.5 years older than me, and he also worked in the business. And we never worked for anybody else. We always had our own business. Like I said, after the war, my father had this Lincoln Mercury franchise that we were able to sell Lincoln Mercury automobiles, starting with the 49 Mercury and 49 Lincoln. And so we were in the automobile business for from 1948 until 1977 when we sold out.
So you attribute focusing yourself thanks to your dad? Thanks to your dad kind of taking you under his wing and keeping you busy and not have time to like dwell on things or
yeah, I would
fall
say
through the cracks?
Yeah. In fact, when we were still kids, and when my brother and I went into the service, my father was not in the automobile business at that time. He was in the poultry and egg business.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't raise poultry. He was a dealer, like a broker.
Right.
He bought from the farmer, and then he marketed in the metropolitan areas like Baltimore, Washington, Philadelphia, New York City. And he had an eviscerating plant where he dressed poultry, sold it to restaurants and colleges and sanatoriums, tuberculosis sanatoriums and hospitals, and he had a good business. And we worked in that business. And we worked in it when we first got back discharged from the service. So, like I say, it was a family business, and we all worked in it. And didn't say much about our experience in the service at that time. I really didn't talk much about it until Joe called me one day.
And what did he say? What did Joe have to say for himself?
And Joe asked me if I would be interested in going over to France. And when he called me, I figured, well, this has to be a scam.
Oh, yep, we've all gone.
So,
what year was this? 5 years ago?
this was in 2015.